Hello, this is Polite Conversation. If you like the video, please comment down below and subscribe. Today I will be discussing race in America, my experience with both SJWs, social justice warriors, and white supremacists. First, when we're talking about this, you need to preface your argument with a few things. First, there is a difference between culture and race. You cannot call somebody racist if they are making fun of Muslims. Another thing, you need to tell the difference between when somebody is joking and when somebody is being serious. If somebody makes a comment about how Africans like watermelon, that's not necessarily racist. White people do not believe that they're better because black people supposedly like watermelon. Same way, if black people were making fun of white women for how much they're on their phone, that would not be racist because most people aren't going to believe they're better because they're on their phone less. So there's a difference between being racist and being racial. Especially when you're joking, most times it's racial, unless if they're being serious. Another thing, which I get a little bit irritated with, is broad generalizations which do not correctly represent reality. When people use the terms white people and black people in their arguments, I find that there's not a lot of common sense behind it. White people, in America specifically, they were not all treated equally. Slavs, or Eastern Europeans, were not treated the same as Western Europeans. Western Europeans were the main, the foundation of society, the richest. In addition to this, Irish immigrants were discriminated against and that's including, Irish were discriminated against, Asians were discriminated against. Another thing, you cannot blame white people today for the actions of their ancestors. My ancestors were not even in America when this happened, so blaming me for oppression doesn't make sense. But even if somebody were the descendant of a slave owner, you cannot blame them for the actions of their grandfather. Going on generalizations, you also can't say that you're black and say that you were oppressed because you were black and therefore you deserve compensation. Black culture in Africa is extremely diverse, as is white culture. So there's a lot of different tribes, and traditionally these tribes do not work together. They had separate cultures, same way in Europe. So you can't make those generalizations. In addition to this, Africans and Arabs participated in the slave trade before Europeans even started. So if you're African and complaining about a descendant of a slave owner oppressing you, there's a chance that your ancestor was actually oppressing another African. So you can't really make those broad generalizations because you don't know the history. But the history today doesn't really matter. It matters a little bit socially, and we'll get to that later. But you can't generally blame all white people for the actions of past groups of white people. That's what I'm trying to get at. Okay, so what I'm getting at now is false integration. In America, many reforms have taken place. End of slavery, voting rights, civil rights movement, all that. They've provided very good things, mostly, besides limits on speech, which I'll get to in a later video. But for the most part, those have provided basic, fundamental rights for black people who had been oppressed. Now people, SJWs specifically, are complaining about culture and how it needs to change. Culture, government has an effect on that, but government cannot force people to think a certain way. You need to understand that. A government cannot be good unless there's good people in it, and people cannot be forced to think a certain way. So to a certain degree, you can't outlaw racism. That would not only go against the First Amendment, but it goes against reality. You can't do it. Even if we were to bypass the First Amendment, you cannot outlaw racism. So what we need instead of that are some social solutions and complete integration. Complete integration is not only an integration of the school system, stuff like that, that's already happened, but it's an integration of genetics. For the animosity between white people and black people to be stopped, they need to mix genetics. They need to be on the same level, and they need to form one race. And that happens through reproduction, because if they continue along separately, there's always going to be in the back of somebody's mind something that says this group is oppressing me, or this group is taking advantage of me, or something like that. So we need true integration. In addition to this, social solutions need to be presented. Now, these are social solutions on a local level. Okay, not everybody needs to be running to the federal government whenever they have a problem. This has become extremely common in modern society, and it really needs to stop because it's annoying. Local governments have issues that they can handle. Local governments allow for diversity, for choice in government, and that's why we don't just have one federal government that decides everything. When people talk about shootings in cities, these cities have a large black population, and instead of running towards the federal government to deal with city police officers or city police departments, the black voters should be voting in sheriffs and other positions that will help them and who focus on that. Local authorities, they provide for diversity, which doesn't only help black people, it helps white people, it helps everybody because there's more choice. That results in more freedom and just a better functioning society. So if you have a problem and it can be handled on a local level, handle it on a local level. There's no need to force your opinion on others. If anything you get out of this video, that is the most important. So honestly, I made this video because I was tired of seeing SJWs and white supremacists combat. Okay. Between those two groups, there is a group with common sense. This common sense group is tired of the SJWs representing everybody who's not an SJW as a white supremacist, and the people in the middle, the rational people, are tired of being labeled as racist because they don't believe that you can force people to believe a certain way. I believe certain social reforms are going to take a while. You can't force them by law. You can't coerce people into doing it, and violence isn't going to help. So if you like this video, please subscribe, and I'll be uploading more videos soon. So thank you. Bye.